Hey babes, welcome to the board. In this video, we are designing dragons. Or you could also say magical girl companions that happen to be dragons and also aren't exactly your stereotypical cutesy magical girl companion. Actually, only one of them is for a girl. The other two are for boys. These are dragons for the Magical Boy story from my house design video I did a little bit ago. If you haven't seen that video, this story is about a boy named Thomas who gets cursed by a dragon, and to get the curse lifted, he has to help the dragon deal with monsters and stuff related to dreams. It's set on it's like two islands, but it's kind of like one island. So one island is inspired by Scandinavia and the other one is inspired by Japan, and it's like a fantasy land, but it's set in the 90s instead of the medieval times. And so Domus is from the Scandinavian side of the island, where some things are loosely based on Norse mythology, especially these dragons. So these dragons are based off of the big three dragons in Norse mythology, the first one being Fafnir. Fafnir in Norse myth was originally a greedy dwarf that became a dragon that guards a pile of gold and was eventually slain by the hero Sigurd. And there was like a cursed ring involved and stuff. There's a TED video about it that's pretty short, so I'll put that in the description. But basically, this story went on to inspire The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings. I think Fafnir is pretty much more of like a stereotypical Western dragon, probably like fire breathing, got wings and stuff, and guards a pile of gold. So my dragon that is inspired by Fafnir actually was not originally inspired by Fafnir. I designed her before I decided I wanted to base things off of Norse mythology, but a lot of her design does coincidentally line up with things that make her seem more like Fafnir, so she's the Fafnir dragon. She was originally named Gui, but I changed it to Fafi, so her name is more similar to Fafnir. A lot like Fafnir, she's a greedy little stinker. She was originally inspired more by Toothless in the How to Train Your Dragon book series, where Toothless in the books is a lot more like the terrible terror you see in the movies, except he can talk in the books and he's a brat. So she's a lot like that, except she's also kind of like a valley girl or a gyaru. She's a girly girl. So that's why she has like jewelry and a bra and a skirt. Because I thought it was funny, because obviously she doesn't need clothes. So that's why it's funny that she has clothes. Her having jewelry was mostly just to show that part of her, like just being a girly girl, little stinkier little dragon. But it also helps tie in the cursed ring and the gold that Fafnir's story coincides with. So that was a nice little coinky dink. Originally, she was kind of more like a little long, skinny dragon, like a little noodle. And so you might think, oh, she looks like Mushu. She did look like Mushu. And like when I originally designed her, I was like, it's fine. It's fine. And then later I came back to it and I was like, no, she looks way too much like Mushu. I gotta change it. So these dragons are kind of inspired by Viking long ships, particularly the heads of them, where they got the dragons on them. So I wanted them to kind of look like that in their heads and their face. But when I was redesigning Fafi, I didn't want her to look like Mushu, so I had the idea to make her middle part more fat, so then she would look more like a boat and less like Mushu. So what you see me drawing here is actually mostly me not even really like doing the redesign. It's more like just ironing out things and doing more character exploration of her poses and expressions, because I've already done most of the concept artwork and trying to figure out her character design on paper or other things. So here I was just doing more character exploration, especially since she's the dragon that will have the most screen time, so to say, because she is the companion of the main character. Like, she's the one who cursed Dwamis because she needs him to help her get some stuff done. So I was approaching her a lot more like a character reference sheet, whereas the other ones, it's more like concept art. Some other things that I changed in her redesign was that in her original design, she had 4 limbs and 2 little wings, and she also had a crisscrossy scale pattern, which was inspired by the patterns I saw on the Viking longships. And they do look cool, but I think her having like those wings and all the legs and all the crissy crossies, it just didn't look very good with her being such a small dragon, because she's probably about the size of like a human head. So a lot of shots or drawings of her would be kind of from more far away. So when you have all that detail and kind of a more complicated silhouette, it kind of just looks muddy and unclear. So as much as I like the scales, I decided to get rid of them so she would look more crispy clear. And I put her wings on her forearms so she would look more like a wyvern, which was in part inspired by behind the scenes short I saw on the Hobbit movie. Like how they were talking about how Smaug in the theater release had 2 wings and 4 limbs, but for the home release, they changed it so he's more like a wyvern, so he's got wing arms and just hind legs. So I was kind of inspired by that. I also think that the way her wings poke up like that, I think it gives her kind of a more unique silhouette. So I like that. These dragons, I really wanted them to feel more like classic dragons, and not just because they're inspired by old dragons, but because of me being dissatisfied with the trend of many modern dragons just acting like dogs or cats or some other kind of animal. Maybe I'm just seeing it because I only watch like stuff that's PG and PG-13. Maybe I'm not getting the cool modern dragons. Like when I was doing some research on these dragons, I saw the God of War's design for Jormungandr, and honestly, it was a little, like, it was cool, but it was kind of ugly, honestly. But it was cool because, like, I really liked how it seemed like a smart, intelligent dragon that seemed like a force to be reckoned with. And it moved slow and it talked slow and it had like clouds and atmospheric hazing on it, so you could tell that this dragon was huge, enormous. And I like that. So maybe I'm not getting any of the cool dragons because I don't engage in anything that's rated mature. Maybe. So if a bunch of the good modern dragons are in the mature media, then for my own sake, I would like to bring more good modern dragons into PG stuff. Just because personally, I would like to see more dragons that are the cunning harbingers of disaster that I feel like they're supposed to be. But honestly, I kind of feel like I'm a little bit of an outlier in this opinion. I'm not sure. But like, if you guys like the cutesy little dragons that act like animals, please feel free to keep liking them. Don't let me spoil your fun, okay? Yeah. So you guys can like what you like, and I'm gonna like what I like, and then we're all happy. Woo! I just want variety, you know? Don't want every dragon to be acting like a little dog. Because dragons, they're not dogs, they're dragons. Alright, this next dragon is inspired by Niroggtti. Niroggtti is the dragon that chews on the roots of Irminsul, and supposedly at Ragnarok he's supposed to fly around. Everyone else is fighting for their lives and he's just flying around. So my dragon inspired by Niroggtti is named Niroggtti, and he has a similar role to the original Niroggtti, but instead of chewing on roots, he's like chewing on something that's more akin to a nervous system, but it's also in like a place, like a giant nervous system, kind of. It's a little bit like a nervous system, but also not. I haven't really developed it a ton. Also, Niroggtti is bonded I'm just saying bonded for lack of a better word, but he's bonded with Domus's cousin Alka. And in this relationship, it's more like he like kind of owns her and she works for him. So yeah, that's all I'll say for now. Once again, I was trying to make this dragon look like the head of a Viking longship, but he was kind of looking more like one of those chompy Mario plants, especially with his crazy teeth. I knew I wanted him to have like one of those perpetually open mouths with crazy teeth. I think that's a big focal point of this design for me, and I really liked that. I feel like I actually did a decent sketch of his head pretty early on, so that was lucky. When I was doing research for this, I found out that Irminsul is an ash tree, so I looked up ash trees, and I saw a little gardener post about them, and part of it talked about problems that ash trees can have, and so there's things like rot and fungus and stuff, so I kind of wanted to include those, but I feel like I didn't really get them in there that much, but that's okay. But I also found there's these bugs called the emerald ash borers that eat them, so I knew I wanted to include those, and that's kind of why you see like pincer like teeth at the bottom, teeth or horns at the bottom of his face. So kind of thought that it would be cool if the dragons had tiny little horns for eyebrows and kind of similar face shapes a little bit. It makes them feel a bit more like they are in the same universe. Knowing that this dragon was residing in roots, I wanted it, or root-like things, whatever. I knew I wanted it to be inspired by those urns style, Viking swirly twirly style. It's a little bit like Art Nouveau, just a little bit. I don't know. So I had the idea of making him have lots of bodies, almost kind of like the opposite of a Hydra, actually. Instead of like having one body and a bunch of heads, it's like one head and a bunch of bodies. But also when I was researching this, I found out that there are other serpents chewing on the roots of Irminsul with Nidhogger. So there's Nidhogger, and then there's Gravitnia. I think some sources say it's a wolf and some say it's a lindworm. So I did actually incorporate both of those into this design. And so you see like a wolf lindworm combo coming out of one of Niroggtti's eyes. And then Gravitnia is said to be the father of Moin and Goin, who are more serpents. And then there's also Gurbak, Ufnir, and Svafnir. They're just like some random serpents that I guess nobody cares about. So at least with the bodies, I had them end with fur to pay a little bit more homage to Moin and Goin being children of Gravitnir, who is partially said to be a wolf. Something that I had a bit of trouble with was the horns. I was originally making them a bit more like antlers, but I think them going back and stuff made him look too much like a Chinese Eastern dragon. And I like Eastern dragons, but I didn't want this dragon to look like an Eastern dragon, especially since like Eastern dragons are like supposedly nice creatures, and then this dragon is evil. Like Nidhogger literally means malice striker, so this dragon is evil. I eventually had the idea to make him have more like antenna that go back, so there's more bug references, so that's cool. He actually has like multiple eyes, so on one side of his head he has like 2 eyes, and this dragon was in part also kind of inspired by Envy's true form from Fullmetal Alchemist, and in one of Envy's eyes, in his true form, he has like multiple pupils, so I put multiple pupils in the eye of this dragon. When I thought about incorporating bug aspects, I also thought to make him a fairy dragon. I actually, when I was redesigning Fafi, I thought about making her a fairy dragon because she's like little and cutesy, even though she's a brat. But it didn't really work very well, so I was very happy that I could incorporate fairy aspects in this dragon because of the bug inspiration, because I love fairies. Him being very long made it so I could justify putting multiple pairs of wings on him, and him being a very big dragon made it so that I could make the wings very big. Also incorporating more bug elements in there. He has like 5 serrated legs and then another leg that's more worm-like, because when I saw the emerald ash borer larvae, I thought that would be a great way to get more visual texture into his design and silhouette. And the shape I ended up using also looks a little bit like mushrooms, so I was able to actually get some mushroom stuff in there, so I was happy with that. You can see a little bit of a pattern on one of the body parts, which is inspired by the pattern of an adder snake, because when I looked up poisonous snakes from Northern Europe, that's what I found. And the reason there's like poisonous snake references is because when I was doing research for this, I found that some of the serpents that are chewing the roots of Irminsul are also connected to like Nastrond, the corpse shore, which is like some kind of like realm of the dead, and there's like a ceiling of snakes, and they're just dripping poison down onto those evil dead people. I don't know. So that's why there's some adder references there. I also made his design have lots of like thornies and pokies on it, because I think it helps sell him being a underground type of creature a little bit more, but also him being evil and scary. Rawr, rawr. I think the dragon, Niroggtti himself, he's kind of more like an aloof kind of evil, because this dragon is huge, really like huge, enormous, huge, ancient, and like if he were to squash a human, he probably wouldn't even know, because he's just so big he wouldn't even care. But the wolf lindworm coming out of his eye, which I named Graveger, and I almost did name him Doggy, like I wrote down Niroggtti and Doggy on here, and I wrote down Doggy as like a placeholder for his name because I hadn't named him yet. And I did seriously consider keeping his name as Doggy because when I name a character, usually the first thing I start calling them is what they get named. So I really did seriously almost call this ancient creature Doggy. But I eventually did name it Graveger, which is kind of similar to Gravitnir, but also not. You could also probably just call him Greg. I don't know. Graveger, his body is connected to Niroggtti, but he's got like his own mind and stuff, so I think he has a little bit more of a conversationable personality. Like if people need to talk to Niroggtti, I'll probably talk to Graveger first. I don't know if Graveger is necessarily less evil or mean than Niroggtti. Like, I don't think Niroggtti is the kind of dragon that would like outwardly like be, I don't know, he's definitely more like a sly, cunning, patient kind of evil. I don't know. I haven't really developed it a whole ton, and so it's kind of hard to put into words, but yeah. Also on his wing pattern, when I was doing research for this, I found out that he lives in kind of like a river, and part of me wanted to incorporate like some river aspects, and then I was like, if I was designing a human and I found out they live in a house, would I incorporate house aspects to them? Like, that's kind of weird. I do like how his wings look a little bit river-like, but hopefully it's not too weird to put a person's house on them if you're doing a character design. I don't know what I'm talking about. This last dragon is inspired by the oh-so-popular Jormungandr, the world serpent. The serpent dragon that is so big that he can wrap his body all around the world and hold his tail in his mouth. And it said that at Ragnarok, he's supposed to let go of his tail, and then him and Thor will have a battle to the death where they both die. So Jormungandr dies, and then Thor, after taking 9 steps, dies. So my Jormungandr dragon is called Joroboro because Jormungandr is an Ouroboros. So I wanted to incorporate that. I actually did like a bunch of research, not just on Jormungandr, but also Ouroboros stuff and like alchemy. I love Fullmetal Alchemist, oh my gosh. I also looked up some stuff about the Leviathans in the Bible. Mostly I was just reading Wikipedia pages. I don't know if I've read the parts of the Bible that have the Leviathan in them. I think this dragon is the one that I probably had the least ideas for, but I could still kind of envision it how I wanted it to be. I think the first thing I knew I wanted it to have was like a big jaw, like a big underbite. I also wanted it to kind of be like a mermaid dragon because this is a serpent that lives in the water. I'm like, it's an ancient dragon, giant harbinger of doom. I'm gonna make it a mermaid because I like mermaids. I was like, on the other dragon, I'm like, I can make it a fairy. So I knew I wanted it to have an underbite kind of, but I think the first version I drew was more handsome than I had originally envisioned the dragon to be. So I was kind of sad about it. I was like, oh, this handsome thing isn't really working. Like, it looks nice, but it's not what the character needs. So I did change it to be more weird looking. That's what I needed the character to be. Kind of weird looking, kind of a little bit stupid almost. Like, I just love the idea of like a bad guy, because the guy that's bonded to this dragon is one of the antagonists in the series. But I love the idea of like a bad guy trying to get this giant ancient doomsday dragon to like cooperate. Like, he'd be like, hey, work with me here, work with me. And then the dragon just like takes forever to turn his giant head, and it just looks at you and it's like, huh? I think it's so funny. Yeah. Anyways, I decided that this dragon should also kind of have like a perpetually open mouth, just like Niroggtti, because this dragon is holding his tail in his mouth all the time. So we got like the underbite and a crazy mouth on this one. I also wanted this dragon to have kind of like poisonous fangs, because Jormungandr supposedly killed Thor with poison. So I looked up some poisonous animals and I found a spitting cobra, and I thought that would be a cool thing to kind of base it off of. So, but instead of having like fangs that come out of the top of his mouth, they come out of the bottom of his mouth. So I think it looks kind of cool. I did kind of struggle with figuring out what kind of eyes I wanted him to have, because like I couldn't give him the handsome ones anymore. Sad, I know, right? So I kind of had the idea of like making it like a cyclops, and that was kind of interesting. And then like I don't know, some more normal eyes. But I actually decided on having him have no eyes. He just has like little star patterns for where his eyes would be, because this dragon is a dragon that lives at like the bottom of the ocean. Who knows how long he's been there. And stuff at the bottom of the ocean doesn't really need eyes that much. Like, this dragon was kind of inspired by things like the oarfish, which is also coincidentally called a doomsday fish. Oh my gosh, when I was looking up the oarfish, I like saw some reference pictures of it, and it was like talking about how one of them had washed up on like some beaches in Mexico, and apparently this is like a harbinger of doom. And I was like, oh, interesting. And then the dates on the pictures said that they had washed up like 5 days ago at the time I had looked it up. So it's like, oh dear. So inspired by an oarfish and also an anglerfish. I had to look up pictures of those, and I didn't like it. I don't really like them. I'm sorry. You might also notice the star patterns and stars hanging from kind of like his fins and tails and like antenna, I want to say. What is it called when like a fish has an antenna? Is it just an antenna? I'm just going to call it an antenna because I don't know. I tried to keep these in rows of 9s and stuff, referencing how Thor took 9 steps and then he died. just because I thought it was kind of interesting. So pretty much every batch of stars has 9 in a row, or like the stars on the ends of his tail and antenna and stuff. They all should add up to 9, although I think the ones for his head antenna, I like miscounted them after I drew them, so I got rid of 2 of the stars and now they're wrong. I saw it after I saved the picture. I'm like, oh, I gotta fix it. So this dragon, actually, I knew that I wanted him and the person he's bonded with to have things to do with like the plot and stuff, but I hadn't entirely developed the stuff yet. So I actually did a lot of drawing and character design for the guy he's bonded with, and a bunch of the research I did helped me figure out how this story might end, which makes it a lot easier to develop in the middle of the story and how things are going to get to the end. So you might notice that instead of just holding his tail in his mouth, he also has like a harness keeping his mouth shut. So like, I like the idea of how when Jormungandr releases his tail, it like signals Ragnarok. So I kind of had the idea of like, if this dragon gets his tail out of his mouth, then like there'll be some kind of disaster. So ideally the harness was actually inspired by a horse bridle. So this harness ideally should have like magical symbols and stuff on it, but I don't have a whole ton of the plot developed yet. And I had to remember that these are just concept art, so I was okay having the bridle just be plain for now. But basically, it's like a kind of a magical seal, keeping his tail in his mouth. Hopefully, he just doesn't pull it out from the other side, because I didn't really think about that when I was designing it. I haven't really talked about these dragons' color palettes. Most of them, I was just doing what I imagined for them, and I did kind of do that with this dragon too. Like, you know, I kind of wanted it to be like a more aquamarine type color. But when I was doing research for the Ouroboros, I saw some stuff about black and white stuff. So I wanted him to have that. And I also saw something about the Ragnarok being like a twilight of the gods, which is why he has star patterns, especially in the dark parts, because he brings about the twilight of the gods, stuff like that. I don't know if that's what Joroboro will do, but we'll see. Also, I made a smaller version of him, just like with how Fafi, I made sure she didn't have too much detail. She's so small, I'd have a smaller version of him for when he's like hanging out with his bad guy. He like comes through a portal, but the portal is more like a place, so I decided that I might design that later if I design locations for this. This dragon is a very big dragon. He's not as big as the original Jormungandr. This dragon just encircles the island instead of the whole world. So yeah, that is the dragons. I had a lot of fun with these dragons, actually. It was a little bit tedious doing hours of research for each dragon, digging through Wikipedia and cross-referencing different links and stuff. It was kind of crazy, but I really enjoyed how this felt like it was stretching and strengthening my creative muscles. I feel like I was able to create some things that I might never have done before, and I'm pretty proud of what I created. I'm pretty pleased with them. I think they look pretty cool. So, I don't know. Let me know if you have a favorite. I don't know. Because I had so much fun with this and doing the house video from the story, I kind of maybe want to do more kind of like pre-production type stuff for this story. So if you like this story, then that's good for you. If you don't like it, then you don't have to watch them. I don't know. All right, well, thank you for watching. Stay curious and have a wonderful day. Bye.